Sade Robinson. On April 1st, 2024, a 19-year-old college student in Milwaukee went on a first date with a man she had met at a bar the week before. She never came home. Sade Carlina Robinson was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and moved to Milwaukee before she turned 2. She was a full-time student at Milwaukee Area Technical College, finishing her final semester in criminal justice, set to graduate in May 2024. She worked 2 jobs simultaneously, one at Pizza Shuttle and another as a server at the Wisconsin Country Club alongside her younger sister Adriana. Her dream was to join the U.S. Air Force, earn a bachelor's degree, and eventually work for the FBI. Friends described her biggest superpower as smiling and turning your day around. She rented her own apartment and bought her own car. Self-sufficient at 19, Maxwell Stephen Anderson, 33, was a bartender from Waukesha County living on Milwaukee's south side. He had briefly served in the U.S. Navy from April 2011 to January 2012 and had a criminal history dating back to 2014 that included domestic incidents, drunk driving, and confrontations with family members and strangers. His phone contained dating app credentials for Bumble, Hinge, OkCupid, and Tinder. About a week before her death, Sade walked into a bar looking for a job. Anderson was bartending. They exchanged numbers. On April 1st, after working her shift at Pizza Shuttle, Sade texted Anderson to arrange their first date. They met at the Twisted Fisherman around 5:30 p.m., then moved to Duke's on Water, where surveillance footage showed them playing beer pong. They left together around 9 p.m. Anderson got into Sade's car. Life 360 data showed her phone arriving at Anderson's apartment by 9:30 p.m. During a 3-hour window at Anderson's home, photos recovered from his phone showed him with Robinson as she lay face down on his couch, apparently incapacitated. Prosecutors argued he killed her during this period. Around 12:30 a.m. on April 2nd, Sade's car left Anderson's home. Surveillance footage showed the vehicle driving erratically around Milwaukee with fogged-up windows. By 2:53 a.m., the phone pinged at Warnemont Park along the Lake Michigan shoreline. Grainy security footage captured a figure dragging something toward the water. That morning, Sade's 2020 Honda Civic was found burned behind an abandoned building. Critical evidence was found inside. Her purse was under the driver's seat, ruling out robbery. Her pants, underwear, jacket, and shoes were in the trunk, with jeans turned inside out and underwear still attached, indicating someone else had removed them. The driver's seat was pushed back to a position fitting someone at least 6 feet tall. Sade could not have been the last driver. MCTS bus footage captured Anderson leaving the scene of the burning car wearing a backpack. That afternoon, a young man walking in Warnemont Park found a severed human leg, later identified as Sade's. Additional remains were found over the following weeks. On May 16th, an arm washed ashore in Waukegan, Illinois. Sade's head has never been recovered. But how do you convict someone when there is no DNA directly linking them to the act and no weapon was ever found? The entire case was circumstantial. A confidential informant told investigators Anderson allegedly forced her at gunpoint into his basement. Anderson was arrested April 4th, 2024. His 8-day trial concluded on June 6, 2025, with a jury of 9 women and 3 men finding him guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson. On August 1, 2025, Judge Laura Crivello sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling him irredeemable and his crimes something out of a horror novel. Anderson maintained his innocence. He filed to begin the appeal process on August 5th and is seeking a public defender. He is currently incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. MATC awarded Sade a posthumous degree in May 2024. Her sister accepted it wearing a pink cap and gown. CBS 48 Hours aired an episode on the case on February 21, 2026. While this case showed how quickly a stranger could become a threat, The next one proved that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is sitting across from you at the dinner table. Bart and Krista Halderson. On July 7, 2021, a 23-year-old Eagle Scout in Windsor, Wisconsin, walked into a police station and filed a missing persons report for both of his parents. He told officers they had left for their family cabin on July 1st and never returned. He had already gone door to door asking neighbors if they had seen them. All of it captured on Ring doorbell cameras. He gave a tearful interview to local media. He watched fireworks at a friend's house on the 4th of July. What nobody knew was that his parents were already dead, and he was the one responsible. Bart Halderson, 50, was a managing director at an international accounting firm. Krista Halderson, 53, was a customer service representative at an auto body shop. Married since 1994, they lived in Windsor, Dane County, and were described as normal folks just trying to live a normal life. Both were deeply involved in their community and in Boy Scouts. They had 2 sons, Mitchell and Chandler. Chandler Michael Halderson, born March 15, 1998, went by Chaz. He was an Eagle Scout, swimmer, and soccer player. Beneath this all-American exterior, he had constructed an elaborate web of lies spanning years. He claimed to be enrolled at Madison Area Technical College. He had dropped out. He created fake email accounts to generate phony college correspondence, sending himself acceptance letters and grade reports. He claimed employment at American Family Insurance. No record of him ever working there existed. He told everyone he had been offered a prestigious position at SpaceX. In reality, he was a college dropout who spent much of his time playing video games in his room. Every single piece of his professional and academic life that his parents believed in was completely fabricated from the ground up. So what happens when the lies finally catch up? The unraveling began when Bart called Madison College directly and discovered Chandler was not enrolled. He planned a confrontation meeting for July 1st, 2021. That is the day investigators believe both parents were killed. Prosecutors alleged Chandler shot Bart in the back with a semi-automatic rifle in the basement, then texted Krista to lure her home and killed her upon arrival. Over 50 fragments of cranial bone, teeth, and a dental cap were found in the family fireplace. Chandler had attempted to burn his parents' remains inside the home. Their phones were found hidden in shoes in the garage, wrapped in paper towels and tin foil. A text, supposedly from Krista, saying they had arrived at the family cabin safely, was actually sent from inside the Halderson home. But the most unexpected piece of evidence came from someone who was not even part of the investigation. Chandler's girlfriend, Kat Melander, had taken a Snapchat Snap Map screenshot showing Chandler's location near the Wisconsin River on July 3rd. She routinely tracked him because she suspected he was seeing other people. That single screenshot led investigators directly to Krista's dismembered remains along the river. Bart's torso, riddled with bullet wounds, was found on a farm property in Cottage Grove where Chandler had been spotted reversing his vehicle with the rear hatch open near a wooded area. Could a jealous girlfriend's screenshot really be the thing that solved a double homicide? Chandler's trial began January 4th, 2022. The prosecution laid out a timeline built on digital evidence, cell tower records, and physical forensics. The defense called no witnesses, not a single one. After just over 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all 8 counts, including 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and mutilation. On March 17, 2022, Judge John Hyland sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, stating, "The only time Mr. Halderson comes back into community is to have the privilege of the burial he denied his parents." Chandler's only statement asked for lawyers willing to take on his appeal. In April 2023, 2 convictions for hiding a corpse were vacated on procedural grounds, but his sentence was unchanged. On November 26, 2025, the Wisconsin Court of Appeals affirmed his conviction, rejecting claims of ineffective counsel. He remains incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution with no further legal avenues apparent. A girlfriend's suspicion helped crack the case wide open. But in the next case, it was a receipt from a cheese shop 160 miles away that unraveled everything. Kelly Dwyer. On October 11, 2013, at 2:37 a.m., security cameras at Park Lafayette Towers in Milwaukee captured a 27-year-old woman entering the building with a man she had been seeing for several weeks. She walked through the lobby and stepped into the elevator. She was never seen leaving. Her name was Kelly Dwyer, and it would take 19 months before anyone found her body. Kelly Dwyer was originally from Lincolnshire, Illinois. She worked at Lululemon, taught yoga, and worked as a nanny in Milwaukee. She was described as bubbly and infectious, someone on the cusp of achieving the life she wanted. She had moved to the city to start fresh and build an independent life. In the months before her disappearance, she had begun experimenting with cocaine, a detail that would later complicate the investigation. Chris Zacco, 38, was the CIO at a relocation management company, a Boston University graduate who had worked in IT for the New York Yankees. He lived in a luxurious 18th-floor condo at Park Lafayette Towers on Milwaukee's east side. On paper, he was a polished professional. Behind that exterior, Zacco maintained a double life. He had a long-term girlfriend, Megan Pollock, who knew nothing about Kelly. He maintained multiple simultaneous relationships with different women. And he had a history of dangerous practices during intimate encounters that investigators would later learn about in disturbing detail. Prosecutors believe Zacco killed Kelly during a fatal encounter, either through manual strangulation or forced asphyxiation. He cleaned his apartment with bleach, placed Kelly's body in a large gray travel golf bag, one later identified as missing by his girlfriend, and loaded it into his trunk. Megan Pollock would later tell investigators she had noticed the golf bag was gone, but never thought to ask about it. What did he do next? Something almost impossible to believe. That evening, Zacco visited Megan Pollock for a dinner date. Kelly's body was still in his trunk during the entire meal. He sat across from his girlfriend, made conversation, and ate dinner as if nothing had happened. The next morning, he drove a suspicious 160-mile round trip to a place called the Mouse House, a cheese shop near Madison. Purchasing a half-pound of pepper jack cheese he claimed was a gift for Megan's parents. The identical cheese was available 1.5 miles from Megan's apartment. Why drive 160 miles for cheese you can buy down the street? Prosecutors argued the cheese run was a cover story for a body disposal trip. He dumped Kelly's body somewhere along the route in rural Jefferson County. Kelly's remains were not found until May 1st, 2015, 19 months later, by a man searching for deer antlers in a field along Inland Drive in Sullivan, Wisconsin. Due to extreme decomposition, the medical examiner could not determine the cause of death. Without a cause of death, how do you prove someone was murdered? How do you hold someone accountable when the body itself cannot tell you what happened? The search of Zacco's apartment for a missing woman uncovered something investigators never expected: illicit substances and material depicting minors. The apartment that looked so polished on the surface held evidence of an entirely different person underneath. That discovery alone led to a 19-year sentence before a homicide charge was ever filed. It took nearly 5 years from Kelly's disappearance to a conviction for her death. His former cellmate also reported that Zacco tried to arrange a hit on an ex-girlfriend who had become a key witness against him. Even from behind bars, he was still trying to control the outcome. Zacco was convicted on October 5, 2018, of first-degree reckless homicide, hiding a corpse, and strangulation after a 10-day trial. The jury heard testimony from forensic experts, former partners, and the cellmate who described the alleged hit arrangement. He received 31 years of initial confinement, plus 19 years of extended supervision, consecutive with his existing 19-year sentence, effectively imprisoning him until approximately age 90. He will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. The Wisconsin Court of Appeals affirmed the conviction on October 31, 2023. The U.S. Supreme Court denied certiorari on the related case in October 2020. He is currently incarcerated at Green Bay Correctional Institution in Alouez, Wisconsin. A cheese receipt helped trace a body dump. But in the next case, it was a forged check deposited the morning after a double homicide that pointed investigators straight to the killer, Dennis and Myrna Kula. On May 24, 2010, a 41-year-old man drove to his parents' home near La Crosse, Wisconsin, called 911, and told the dispatcher he had just found both of them dead. He sounded devastated. But investigators would soon learn that he had deposited a $50,000 check with his father's forged signature just 3 days earlier, on the very day they were killed. Dennis Kula, 68, was a Navy veteran, UW-Madison graduate, and board-certified pharmacist who owned several pharmacies across the La Crosse area. He had built a successful career over decades and was well respected in the community. Myrna Kula, 65, was a UW Stevens Point graduate who had become a beloved substitute teacher known for her warmth and kindness towards students. Married 42 years, they lived in an affluent home near La Crosse. Their son Eric was described as inseparable from Dennis, like bread and butter. Eric Kula, 41, lived in West Salem with his wife Christine and their son. He presented himself as a successful day trader who was making smart investments with his parents' money. In reality, he had received over $700,000 from his parents to fund his trading and lost every cent of it. Every single dollar, gone. He was completely broke, a secret he kept even from his wife. So when his parents started asking questions about where the money went and when they might see returns, Eric had a problem he could not talk his way out of. On May 21, 2010, Eric and Christine's 16th wedding anniversary, Myrna was at her computer at home. Computer analysis showed her last keystroke at 5:41 p.m., the exact moment investigators believe she was shot in the back of the head with a .22 caliber rifle. Dennis returned from work shortly after and was shot as he walked through the door, car keys in hand, coat still on, before he could even set down his belongings. Whoever did this knew exactly when each of them would be home. The bedroom was staged to look like a burglary, with dresser drawers pulled out, but no valuables were taken. Nothing of value was missing from the entire house. That evening, Eric went out to celebrate his anniversary with his wife Christine, as though nothing had happened. He ate dinner, smiled, and returned home. The next morning, he deposited a $50,000 check bearing his father's signature, dated the day of the killings. A handwriting expert later determined the signature was forged. When Myrna did not show up for work on May 24th, Eric drove to the house, called 911, and made his discovery. In the days that followed, he planted a fake threatening note reading, "Fixed you," in his own mailbox to suggest an outside intruder had targeted the family. Then, under questioning, he admitted he wrote it himself. But here is where the case takes an extraordinary detour. A neighbor, bank president, Steve Burgess, had been receiving threats from an unrelated individual. When you searched Burgess's address on Google Earth, it actually zoomed to the Kula house, 2 doors down. The defense built an entire theory around a botched hit intended for Burgess, but the person making the threats had a verified alibi for that night. Additionally, Eric's brother-in-law, Patrick Cowell, was investigated but cleared. How? His Xbox gaming console confirmed he was playing video games during the time of the killings. The digital timestamps matched perfectly. Eric was convicted in June 2012 of 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and forgery, despite a purely circumstantial case. No confession, no eyewitness, no DNA. No weapon ever recovered. The jury relied entirely on the financial trail, the forged check, the staged scene, the fake note, and the computer timestamps. He received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 6 years for forgery. His appeals argued that evidence was insufficient, but courts disagreed at every level. The Wisconsin Supreme Court rejected his second and final appeal on February 21, 2020. He remains incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution in Walpoon. An Xbox cleared one suspect, and a forged check condemned another. But in the next case, it was a fitness tracker that freed the wrong man from jail and helped catch a killer. Nicole Vander Heiden. On May 21, 2016, a jogger in Ledgeview, near Green Bay, Wisconsin, spotted something in a farm field off a rural highway. It was the body of a 31-year-old mother of 3. She had suffered 241 injuries and was so badly beaten, she was unrecognizable. A forensic dentist was needed to confirm her identity. Her name was Nicole Vander Heiden. Nicole, known as Nikki, was a mother of 3 from Ledgeview. She attended UW Green Bay, pursuing a double major in science and education, working toward a future in teaching. Her youngest son, Dylan, with boyfriend Doug Dietrich, was approximately 6 months old at the time. She was known for her bright energy and loved being a mother above everything else. George Stephen Birch, known as Big Country, was a 38-year-old Virginia transplant who had arrived in Green Bay on approximately March 1, 2016. He had previously been tried and acquitted of a gang-related homicide in Virginia in 1998 and was on probation for grand larceny, meaning he was not even supposed to be in Wisconsin. He had no ties to the community, no family there, and no obvious reason to be in the area. So how did a man with that kind of history end up in a quiet town near Green Bay? And how did he cross paths with Nicole Vander Heiden? On the night of May 20th, 2016, Nicole and Doug went to the Watering Hole bar. They argued after she saw him talking to another woman. The couple separated. Nicole ended up at the Sardine Can in downtown Green Bay. Birch was at nearby Richard Cranium's bar. After bars closed around 2 a.m., prosecutors believe Birch offered Nicole a ride home. Cell phone data placed Birch outside Nicole and Doug's home for about 15 minutes around 3 to 3:15 a.m. Prosecutors argued Birch strangled Nicole with a cord outside her home, while Doug and their baby slept inside. His phone then placed him at the farm field where her body was found, and at the highway location where her clothing was discarded. The cell tower data created a digital map of his movements that night, one that tracked perfectly with every piece of physical evidence found at every scene. But here is the twist that defines this entire case. Police initially arrested the wrong man. Doug Dietrich was taken into custody and jailed for 18 days. Blood found in the garage and in their car seemed damning. Investigators believed they had their man. But lab results changed everything. The garage blood was from a turkey Doug had hunted weeks earlier. The car blood came from one of their children. And the case-breaking evidence was something no one had ever used in a courtroom before: Doug's Fitbit. The fitness tracker showed he walked only 12 steps during the relevant time frame. He was sleeping the entire time. It was one of the first cases in American history to use Fitbit data as an alibi, and it proved beyond question that the man sitting in jail was innocent. Meanwhile, investigators turned their attention to Birch. His DNA was found in 16 spots on Nicole's body and on the cord used to end her life. And there was something else that caught investigators off guard. He had obsessively viewed online news stories about her disappearance 64 times in the days after her body was found. Why would a stranger follow a missing woman's case that closely unless he already knew exactly what had happened to her? Birch was convicted on March 1st, 2018, after a 2-week trial. He took the stand in his own defense and blamed Doug Dietrich, claiming a consensual encounter that went wrong. The jury did not believe him. The judge called it the most brutal case ever committed by one person in the history of Brown County and sentenced him to life without parole. The Wisconsin Supreme Court later upheld the conviction in a 4-3 decision on June 29, 2021, with a narrow split, centered on Fourth Amendment issues regarding how his cell phone data was obtained. 3 justices believed the phone evidence should have been suppressed, but 4 disagreed, and the conviction stood. Birch is currently housed at the Wisconsin Secure Program Facility in Boscobel. A Fitbit freed an innocent man and helped put the real killer away. But in the next case, a husband came up with a story so elaborate that it fooled almost no one. Yet his own family still believes him to this day. Barbara Kendhammer. On the morning of September 16, 2016, a man in West Salem, Wisconsin, called 911 and told the dispatcher that a metal pipe had fallen from an oncoming flatbed truck, pierced his windshield, and struck his wife in the head. She was in critical condition. She died the next day. It sounded like a freak accident, the kind of thing that makes the news because of how random and tragic it is. But investigators quickly realized that almost nothing about the story added up. Barbara Kendhammer, 46, was a part-time cafeteria worker at West Salem Middle School and a recent grandmother. She and her husband Todd were high school sweethearts who married in 1991 and had 2 children, Jessica and Jordan. By all accounts, they seemed like a happy couple. They had just celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary shortly before that morning. Todd Allen Kendhammer, 46, worked at a factory producing aluminum cans and did siding, work in glass repair. No motive was ever established in this case. There was no life insurance payout to gain, no evidence of infidelity, no history of domestic issues between them, no financial strain. So why would a husband with no apparent reason do something like this? Todd told police he and Barbara were driving on County Road IM around 8 a.m. when a 53-inch metal pipe fell from an oncoming flatbed truck and came through the windshield. He pulled over, called for help, and waited with his wife. But the story began falling apart almost immediately. No truck was ever located despite extensive searches, media appeals, and public tips. Police canvassed the area. They checked traffic cameras. They reached out through every channel available. Nothing. No truck driver came forward. No witness reported seeing a flatbed in the area that morning. Their stated destination was fabricated. The man Todd said they were driving to see denied it completely. Barbara was scheduled to be at work at 8 a.m., and they were heading in the opposite direction of her job. The pipe itself had no blood on it despite supposedly striking her fatally, while dirt on the pipe matched soil found in the car's trunk. Wisconsin Crime Lab analysis revealed the windshield had likely broken when the passenger door was open and no one was seated in the passenger seat. And then there was the physical evidence on Todd himself. He had scratches on his neck, bloody knuckles, and Barbara's DNA under his fingernails. The medical examiner found Barbara's injuries: 3 lacerations to the back of her head, a broken nose, and bruising all over her body, were very inconsistent with the pipe story and far more consistent with a physical confrontation. Every piece of forensic evidence told a different story than the one Todd was telling. If Todd had 28 guns in his basement and wanted to harm his wife, why would he use a pipe and build an elaborate cover story involving a phantom truck? That question became the centerpiece of the defense. Todd's children have waged a fierce and public fight for his innocence, hiring attorney Jerry Buting of Making a Murderer fame, a defense forensic pathologist who testified at a 2021 evidentiary hearing said Barbara's injuries were consistent with a vehicular accident, not an altercation. Almost everyone in the courtroom during the trial was there to support Todd. Community members, friends, family, all of them convinced he was telling the truth. But the jury disagreed. Todd was convicted in December 2017 and sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 30 years, which would make him eligible around 2048. His post-conviction motion, claiming ineffective assistance of counsel, was denied in May 2022. The Wisconsin Court of Appeals affirmed the conviction in June 2024. The Wisconsin Supreme Court denied review in October 2024. On January 6, 2025, Buting filed a petition for certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court, which denied it on February 24, 2025. All appeals are now exhausted. Kendhammer remains at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun. His children continue to publicly maintain his innocence. A husband's story never held up. But in the next case, the killer did not just get away with it at first. He showed up to comfort the people grieving the person he had just taken. Jesse Blodgett. On July 15, 2013, a 19-year-old music student in Hartford, Wisconsin, was found dead in her bed by her mother around 12:30 p.m. She appeared blue, with dark ligature marks around her neck. Her hands, wrists, and ankles had been bound. What made this case unlike almost any other was who showed up the very next day to comfort her grieving family and friends at a public vigil. It was the person who killed her. Jesse Blodgett was a UW-Milwaukee sophomore studying music education on a talent scholarship. She played piano, violin, and sang, and had just launched a private teaching business with 26 students. She starred in community theater productions and dreamed of becoming a choir director, touching 100 young lives a year for 40 years. She was an activist who cared deeply about combating interpersonal harm. Daniel Bartelt, 19, was Jesse's former classmate at Hartford Union High School and a fellow musician. They had dated briefly during their freshman year and remained close friends afterward. They had even recorded music together just weeks before she was killed. To everyone around them, they appeared to be good friends with a shared love of music. But Bartelt had dropped out of UW-Stevens Point and was secretly unemployed, spending his days sitting alone at parks, reading and writing. His computer contained searches about serial killers ranked by body count and a film with a plot strikingly similar to what he would later carry out. 3 days before Jesse's death, Bartelt attacked a stranger named Melissa Richards at Richfield Nature Park with a knife. She fought back hard, sustaining 15 stitches, and managed to get a description of her attacker's vehicle, a blue Dodge Caravan. That attack would later become a critical thread connecting Bartelt to what happened next. On the night of July 15th, Bartelt entered the unlocked Blodgett home while the family slept. He bound Jesse's hands, wrists, and ankles, harmed her, and strangled her with a ligature. He then gathered the evidence, placing a ball gag, ropes, bloody wipes, and tape inside a cereal box and disposed of it in a trash can at a nearby park. Jesse's mother found her the next afternoon, lying in her bed, appearing blue with dark marks on her neck. The next day, Bartelt attended Jesse's vigil, holding hands with her friends, comforting her family, acting like a mourner who had lost someone he truly cared about. He stood among the people whose lives he had just shattered and offered them words of comfort. Nobody suspected a thing. But when police called him about the unrelated park attack on Melissa Richards, because his parents' caravan matched the vehicle description, he never asked why they wanted to talk. Most innocent people would want to know why police are calling them. Bartelt did not. Then came the moment that broke the case wide open. During questioning, Bartelt casually mentioned that Jesse had been raped and murdered, but police had released no indication of a sexual component at that point. The only person who would have known that detail was the person who was there. His claim of being at Woodlawn Union Park on the morning of the incident led investigators directly to the trash can containing the evidence he had disposed of. DNA from both Bartelt and Jesse was found on the ropes. How does someone do that? How do you hold hands with grieving friends at a vigil for someone you killed hours earlier? Bartelt was convicted in August 2014 and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. His appeals, including to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which affirmed in February 2018, and the U.S. Supreme Court, which denied certiorari on October 1, 2018, have all been denied. A pro se motion in 2020 was also rejected. He remains incarcerated in the Wisconsin State Prison System. Jesse's father, Buck Blodgett, founded the Love Greater Than Hate Project, delivering over 120 presentations at schools, corporations, and prisons. He has publicly forgiven Bartelt, who has never apologized. A killer attended his own victim's vigil and gave himself away with a single sentence. But in the next case, the weapon was not a gun or a knife. It was something you can buy at any pharmacy for a few dollars. Lynn Hernon. On October 3, 2018, a 34-year-old woman in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, called 911 and said she had found her friend unresponsive at home. When paramedics arrived, they found the body of 62-year-old Lynn Hernon, surrounded by scattered prescription bottles and crushed medication on her chest and on a plate beside her. It looked like an overdose. It was not. Lynn Hernon was a lifelong beautician from Pewaukee, Waukesha County, who never married and lived alone with her cats. She lived paycheck to paycheck for most of her life until 2014, when she inherited approximately $250,000 after her mother's death. In the final 2 years of her life, her health had mysteriously and rapidly declined. Lung disease, gastrointestinal problems doctors could not diagnose, chronic pain, depression, and agoraphobia. She became almost entirely dependent on one person for care. That person was Jessie Rose Kerchevsky, approximately 34 at the time. Kerchevsky had known Hernon since childhood through her mother, Jennifer Flower, who was Hernon's best friend. Hernon considered Kerchevsky like a daughter. But Kerchevsky had a prior conviction for identity theft and forgery, for which she was sentenced to 8 years and released in 2016. After her release, she was described as a down-on-her-luck gambling addict. After her 2016 prison release, Kerchevsky became Hernon's primary caretaker and began draining her finances. Hernon's money market account went from $250,000 to $87 by the time she died. Prosecutors documented over $144,000 stolen through checks with misleading memos like IRS payment. During Hernon's final hospital stay, money was being withdrawn from her account at casino ATMs. On the day Hernon died, a J.C. Penney credit card was opened in her name. Days later, $3,000 in furniture purchased on a credit card in Hernon's name was delivered to Kerchevsky's home. But the most shocking part of this case is the weapon. The Waukesha County Medical Examiner found an unexpected substance in the toxicology results: tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in Vicine eye drops. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Linda Biederdzitsky testified she had never seen this substance appear in a toxicology report before. And here was the critical detail. The crushed medications placed on Hernon's body and on the plate beside her were not found at elevated levels in her blood. The entire overdose scene was staged. None of those pills had been ingested. Someone had placed them there after she was already gone. If you have made it this far and enjoy deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of these. In September 2019, nearly a year after the death, the manor was officially ruled homicide. During interrogation, Kerchevsky's story changed dramatically over 3 days. First, she denied any knowledge. Then she claimed Hernon got a buzz from drinking Vicine. Finally, she claimed Hernon poured 6 bottles of eye drops into her own water bottle. Texts to her boyfriend 3 months after the death revealed damning knowledge. She had written that, "People put it in people's drinks all the time. There's no taste to it, and people don't notice. And you can die from that." After conviction, prosecutors discovered a 37-page handwritten document from Kerchevsky asking a friend to forge documents and create a fake recording impersonating Lynn Hernan, saying she chose to end her own life. This caused her defense attorneys to withdraw and delayed sentencing by 4 months. 8 attorneys have cycled through her case in total. Kerchevsky was convicted on November 14, 2023, of first-degree intentional homicide and 2 theft counts after a 3-week trial before Judge Jennifer Doro. Sentenced on April 5, 2024, she received life in prison with parole eligibility after 40 years, making her approximately 80 before she could be considered for release, plus restitution of $386,000. Judge Dorau ordered Kerchevsky's mother to turn over Hernan's cremated remains within 48 hours. Kerchevsky maintains her innocence and has announced plans to appeal. The case was featured on CBS 48 Hours under the title Death by Eye Drops, rebroadcast on February 1, 2025. Eye drops from a pharmacy shelf became a weapon. But the next case did not just make headlines in Wisconsin. It became a global phenomenon that divided an entire country. Teresa Halbach. On October 31, 2005, a 25-year-old freelance photographer drove to a salvage yard in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, to photograph a minivan for Auto Trader magazine. She had an appointment with a client at the property. She was never seen alive again. Her name was Teresa Halbach, and her case would become one of the most debated criminal investigations in American history. Teresa Marie Halbach was born March 22, 1980, and grew up on a 225-acre dairy farm in Calumet County. She graduated from UW Green Bay summa cum laude in 2002 with a photography degree, opened her own studio called Photography by Teresa, and did freelance work for Auto Trader magazine photographing vehicles for sale. She was an avid traveler, karaoke enthusiast, and volleyball coach. Stephen Avery, born July 9, 1962, grew up at Avery's Auto Salvage in Two Rivers. He had a troubled history that included an animal cruelty conviction in 1982, and most significantly, a wrongful conviction for a crime he did not commit in 1985 that kept him imprisoned for 18 years. DNA exoneration freed him in 2003. At the time of Halbach's disappearance, Avery had filed a $36 million lawsuit against Manitowoc County for the wrongful imprisonment. His nephew Brendan Dassey, who had an IQ of approximately 73, was also later charged. On Halloween 2005, Halbach had an appointment at Avery's Auto Salvage to photograph a minivan. Avery had reportedly used a fake name when requesting her and called her cell phone 3 times that day, twice from a blocked number. She was never seen alive after that appointment. Her blue RAV4 was found hidden at the salvage yard on November 5th, with Avery's blood in 6 locations inside. Burned bone fragments confirmed as hers were found in a fire pit behind his garage. Her car key was found in his bedroom with his DNA on it. A bullet in his garage matched his .22 rifle and carried Halbach's DNA. On March 1st, 2006, Brendan Dassey was interrogated without legal counsel or a parent present. He gave statements describing participation in the crime. He later recanted, saying the statements were coerced and that investigators fed him the details. So was Stephen Avery, framed by a county desperate to avoid a $36 million payout? Or did a man who spent 18 years in prison for something he did not do go on to commit the very crime he had been falsely accused of? The 2015 Netflix documentary Making a Murderer became a global phenomenon and presented a theory that Manitowoc County officials planted evidence to neutralize Avery's lawsuit. The RAV4 key was found by 2 Manitowoc deputies who were parties to Avery's civil suit. After multiple prior searches, found nothing. Avery's blood in the RAV4 may have come from a preserved blood vial from his 1985 case. New witnesses later claimed to have seen a family member pushing the RAV4 into the salvage yard. Avery was convicted on March 18, 2007, after a 5-week trial of first-degree intentional homicide and felon in possession of a firearm. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Avery settled his $36 million civil suit for just $400,000 to fund his defense. Dassey was convicted separately and sentenced to life with parole eligibility in 2048. Attorney Kathleen Zellner took Avery's case in 2016 and has pursued multiple appeals. On January 15, 2025, the Wisconsin Court of Appeals rejected his third appeal on all issues. On May 21, 2025, the Wisconsin Supreme Court denied review. Zellner announced plans to file a federal habeas corpus petition. In early 2026, the Court of Appeals granted Avery the right to appeal on the bone destruction issue, the state's return of potentially exculpatory bone evidence to Halbach's family without notifying the defense. Avery is currently at Fox Lake Correctional Institution. Brendan Dassey has exhausted all judicial appeals after the full en banc 7th Circuit reinstated his conviction in 2017 in a 4-3 decision, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his case in 2018. Governor Evers declined clemency in 2019. He remains at Oshkosh Correctional Institution, eligible for release in 2048. In March 2025, he told advocates, "Please tell everyone that I said hi, that I love them, and that I appreciate all the love." 1 case, 2 convictions, a global debate that remains unresolved. But the final case on this list may be the most shocking of all, because in this one, the evidence pointed directly at the killer, and the jury still let him walk. Tana Togstad and Timothy Mumbrew. On March 22, 1992, 2 bodies were discovered inside a farmhouse on Butternut Ridge Road in rural Waupaca County, Wisconsin. The victims had been stabbed repeatedly. Their dog was also found dead. For 30 years, nobody was charged. Then DNA technology caught up with a suspect who said he never even knew he did it. Tana Togstad, 23, was born August 20th, 1968, in New London, Wisconsin. She graduated from New London Senior High School and worked at Cherney Company, a cheese factory in Weyauwega. Timothy Mumbrew, known as TW, was 34, a Waupaca foundry worker who had separated from his wife and was dating Togstad. They were found together inside Tana's farmhouse. Her dog Scruffy was found dead beside them. Tony G. Haase from Weyauwega also worked at Waupaca Foundry. His connection to this crime traced back decades to a 1977 snowmobile accident that killed his father when Tony was a child. One of the other riders in that accident was Tana Togstad's father. Haase blamed the elder Togstad for his father's death, creating a motive rooted in 15 years of displaced grief and resentment. On the night of March 20th through 21st, 1992, Togstad and Mumbrew were last seen at a Clintonville tavern. They returned to Tana's farmhouse. According to prosecution theory and statements Haase later made, Haase spent that evening drinking heavily and dwelling on his father's death. He drove to Tana's farmhouse, approximately 1.5 miles from his own home, and entered. He got into a confrontation with Mumbrew and stabbed him multiple times in the head, neck, and chest. When Tana yelled, he struck her and then stabbed her once in the chest. He also killed her dog. The autopsy revealed Tana had been harmed in additional ways. The case went cold. For 30 years, there were no arrests, no charges, no answers. Tana's mother, Helen Hoffman, spent 3 decades waiting. Then investigators tried something inventive. On July 6, 2022, they arranged a covert traffic stop on Haas. During the stop, they collected the pen he used to sign a warning ticket. His DNA from that pen matched male fluids found on Togstad's body back in 1992. His handprints matched prints found on her door. After 30 years, they had their link. During a 7-hour interrogation, Hazy initially denied any involvement. Then his story shifted. He claimed fragmented, partial memories of that night. He told investigators something that stunned them. This is going to sound stupid, but I never knew I did it. He described pieces of the evening but claimed alcohol had erased most of his recollection. Tana's mother, Helen Hoffman, died just 2 days after Hazy's arrest. Her brother Richard said it was as if a huge weight had been lifted, and she could finally let go. But here is where this case takes a turn nobody expected. Despite DNA evidence found in 16 spots, matching handprints on the door, and a recorded statement from Hazy himself, the defense argued the statement was coerced during a deceptive 7-hour interrogation session. They challenged the chain of custody on the DNA evidence after 30 years of storage, and they pointed to an alternate suspect, Hazy's uncle Jeff Teal, who had a history of troubling behavior and died by his own hand in 1995. With Teal dead, he could never be questioned or cleared. After 4 days of deliberation, including telling the judge they were at an impasse, the jury returned a verdict that shocked everyone following the case: not guilty on both counts. On August 11, 2025, Hazy was released approximately 1 hour later. He walked out a free man, and because of double jeopardy protections, he can never be retried. However, Tana's brother, Richard Togstad, filed a $17 million civil wrongful death lawsuit on August 6, 2025, alleging wrongful death, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The civil case has a lower burden of proof than the criminal trial. Settlement talks are ongoing, with oral arguments on summary judgment scheduled for June 22, 2026. The 1992 double homicide officially remains unsolved. The case was featured on NBC's Dateline under the title, Raising the Dead. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.